When I was little, my father was famous. He was the greatest samurai in the empire. He cut off the heads of 131 lords. He was the greatest samurai in the empire. And he took me with him.
Hey everybody. A commenter pointed out this video by Addy Marble yesterday called Dear Atheist. And I was interested in it because I find how theists think atheists think to be fascinating. In some ways, the relationship between atheists and theists is like that between flat earthers and supporters of the accepted science of the earth. Most atheists are raised in a theistic environment and were taught what they should believe. And at some point, through a variety of mechanisms, they rejected that belief. You would think that a flat earther might be able to see that parallel and thus be able to handle it better, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Maybe it's because the flat earther didn't just reject the belief that they were raised with, they replaced it with another belief, and they just can't visualize another point of view that someone may have that hasn't gone through the similar replacement. Anyway, I have never met or heard a theist that could accurately take the point of view of an atheist, so I find their attempts quite interesting. Now, Marble starts by saying he's being accosted online by atheists, which is a terrible thing, being accosted. He mentions that these folks get upset at others for having different viewpoints, and I have to agree with them there. I get accosted every day by people who cannot stand the fact that I have a different viewpoint. Some people have even come to my channel and posted attempts at homophobic insults at me, strictly because I think the concept of a flat earth is nonsense. He goes on to show a kind of bewilderment that just because someone has a different point of view, they automatically get labeled as some type of idiot. And I'm like, wow. I cannot believe that I made it over a minute into a Addy Marble video and I'm actually agreeing with what this man says. I mean, every day I get people who come at me with insults to my intelligence, my character, hell, my genetics, just for not agreeing with them and agreeing with mainstream science. Not only that, there's a wide swath of people who think people like me are evil, or at least at minimum pawns of evil people, just for disagreeing with a flat earth notion. And up to this point in his video, I'm with him. And then he starts to talk about flat earth stuff. And I could talk about it, but no, we all know that he has no idea what he's talking about. And so it's just an easy target. I'm interested in his discussion of atheism because I've never heard his opinion on the matter. And finally, he gets to the point of his video and begins his assessment of the position of atheists. First off, let me be clear. When he mentions atheists, he's talking about people that come to him and make an affirmative claim that there is no God. That's a very specific person he should be addressing. People who have discussed this topic with me may or not have noticed that I have never made the claim that there is no God. I said that I have no evidence of one, I've seen no need for one, and thus I do not believe in one. I'm not the type of atheist that says there is no God. But he's decided not to just address those atheists, but instead he says the whole idea of atheism. I've said it before, that I'm interested in critical thinking and I seek out examples of poor critical thinking in action. And that's what I see here. Now, I am in no way trying to say that Marble should not believe in a God. He seems happy, and if that works for him, great. This is not about Marble's belief at all. No one viewing this should think that I am saying that Marble or anyone else is wrong to believe in a God. So there is no reason for you to comment that I need to prove to you that there is no God. You who are about to type it, stop it. But as an atheist, I do want to point out the flaws in his arguments against atheism. His first claim is that atheists haven't given a lot of thought to how things work. According to him, we live in a world of perfect order, a phrase that I find fascinating. Perfect order? Do we have an objective measurement for that? The best ones can say is that we live in a world where stuff works. But perfect order? I don't think Mr. Marble can defend the perfect order claim. And he says that atheism is based in the idea of something coming from nothing, and that makes no sense. Now, the fact is that atheism itself is based on the lack of belief in the existence of God, and it says nothing about how one thinks the universe came to be. So he has the foundation of atheism incorrect and is arguing a straw man until someone makes the direct claim. He then tries to make an argument about how explosions only ever destroy, and no explosion has ever created anything, in an attempt to reduce the explosion of the Big Bang to a simple chaotic chemical explosion. Because you see, since we talk about the universe exploding, and it's the same word, it must be the same type of thing. Which is odd, because when we say that there's been an explosion in the frog population, we're not saying that a bunch of frogs got blown up. No, explosion in this case means sudden expansion. But even if we were talking about a massive, violent, chaotic detonation, he says perfect order of the universe would be like a Ferrari spontaneously forming from an explosion in a junkyard. And that's a very vivid image, but it doesn't reflect how science thinks about this, or, well, in particular, it doesn't reflect how this particular atheist sees the order of the universe. The order that stems from my explosion is much less complex, and it does happen all the time. Let's say that explosion goes off in the junkyard and everything looks like chaos. Then investigators look closer. And as they look around, they find a light dust on the side of a vehicle near the center of the explosion. That dust is a crystallized form of a compound that only forms when the wax on that car reacts with a specific chemical, and that tells them what type of bomb exploded. That substance, that complex molecular compound, wasn't there before the explosion. Those crystals, that order, would not be formed if there was not that explosion. That is order forming from an explosion. The claim that order never comes from an explosion is false. The claim that nothing is ever created in an explosion is false. He then makes an argument about randomness, stating that there are things that could never occur if things were random. The example he uses, and by the way, I'm not arguing for pure randomness, I'm just addressing the examples he's bringing up, is that people breathe in oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide, and trees, plants take in CO2 and expel oxygen. And he ponders how this symbiotic relationship can happen if things were random. First off, in order to claim that it's unexplainable, you have to make two unsupported assumptions. That the mutually beneficial relationship between plants and people is absolutely required for their existence, and that it has always been that way. But plants have existed before people and animals, and they did not rely on them as a source of CO2 when they first appeared. So that being the case, you have a life form developing in an environment that already has the other life form, and over time they develop a relationship. But that's not random. But more importantly, no one is arguing that it is random. He then talks about seeds being able to grow more seeds and make fruit as an example of the perfect order of the universe. And that if someone doesn't believe that there is a God, then they believe that what happens with plants and people is a random occurrence. And that's simply not an accurate representation of what atheists like myself believe. It is a false claim. He goes on and on with examples of things in nature and in the human body and says, people think that's random. No, we don't. He goes on to the old trope about how books have authors, how something as complex as a book definitely has an author, and how our bodies are so much more complex than that. How can anyone think that it's random? He gets all fake worked up about it too. If someone came up to you and said that book has no author, you would look at them like they were an idiot. And you want to say to me that the human body, which is 1,000 times more complex than a damn book, has no creator, that it's random, and you expect me to have the slightest bit of respect for you? Really? Now, I've already said that this is a false representation of what people like myself believe, so I won't go into that anymore. But I do want to point out that a line of reasoning that Marble himself has laid out, that seems to follow logic and reason, stops short of it. The reasoning that basic orderly things we know in our world have a creator, that complex things like cars and books we know have creators, and thus the complex being that is mankind must have a creator, seems sensible. But they stop there. They never go on to the next step, which is the thing that created this mankind, that created this complex universe, must, by its very nature, be complex. More complex than a book, than a car, than a human, more complex than the universe. Yet it, he, she, they, it can exist, according to theists, without a creator. Why? Because. But why? Because it can. But why can't the universe exist without a creator? Because it can't. You see, theists like Marble, and I'm not saying that this is Marble's position because he did not actually say this, they want to use logic and reason until it doesn't serve them, and then they discard it. Much like flat earthers make use of the laws of physics. Anyway, let's be honest. This discussion comes down to people trying to explain what they can't know. And more specifically, for theists like Marble or atheists like myself, it comes down to things either coming into existence from nothing or always having existed. Either the universe or God has always existed without a creator, or they came about from nothing without a creator. My point of view has a very basic universe with a handful of simple rules existing or coming into existence. How, I don't claim to know. And through those basic rules, gathering pockets of complexity slowly and over an incredibly long period of time. The Marble theist point of view has that this most sophisticated and complex thing imaginable has always existed or came into existence somehow in its full complexity. Now, you can argue that you prefer your scenario, my theistic friends, but you can't claim that it actually makes more sense. Now he goes on to what he seems to think is the important point. That the idea of a universe being vast and random and the earth being a very tiny fraction of it is a plot to make people feel insignificant, that they have no value, and that in turn causes people to see others as having no value, so they treat them like they're not good enough. And he says that that's not right. And I don't disagree with that. But I do disagree that it's this idea that people are small and unimportant that makes them look down on their fellow man. I'm reminded of the beginning of his video where Marble bemoans how people attack and belittle those that disagree with them. I'm reminded that this is exactly what people like Marble do. Now, Marble believes that he is a creation of God. He believes he is special, and so are you. Yet that does not stop him from treating people as if they are not good enough for him just because they don't agree with him. So obviously, it's not a belief in a random universe that's making him be that way. He goes on to give a rousing pep talk to let people know that they are valuable, and I think that this is great. Why? Because even though I don't believe that people were created with a special purpose by a God, I believe people are incredible, fascinating, valuable, and special. Every one of us, is the result of a struggle for survival that is epic on a scale that honestly none of us can truly fathom. Our many cousins, the other human species that lived before us and along us, did not make it to this point. There was a time when we as a species were afraid of nearly everything, when we scavenged for scraps that the big predators left behind. Now we can literally move mountains. We can move faster and strike harder than any predator out there. We can live longer and in more places than nearly every other animal on this planet. We have stood on the moon and sent things out of our solar system. You can dedicate your life to a cause. You can make your own purpose because you are a human being living right now, which is an amazing time. You have survived in a universe that is filled with destruction, on a planet rife with disasters, and is literally crawling with danger. And damned if that doesn't make you special.
That's my job! That's what I do! I don't lose! I win! I win! Is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?
Maybe you came by to congratulate me on last night's victory.